Section 1. Journaling. If you change nothing else in 2026, change this. Start writing. Not for content, not for likes, not for anyone, for you. Because most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because their mind is crowded. Too many thoughts, too many emotions, too many half-finished decisions bouncing around in their head like noise. And when the noise gets loud, they react, they snap, they overthink, they avoid. They make the wrong move not because they're evil, but because they're overwhelmed. Marcus Aurelius had more pressure than you will ever face. Emperor of Rome, wars, politics, sickness, betrayals, death around him constantly. And how did the most powerful man in the world start and end his days? Quietly, alone, with a journal. That's what makes meditation so different. It wasn't written for an audience. It wasn't meant to impress. It was private training, a mental workout, a way to correct himself before the world could pull him off course. He wasn't writing philosophy. He was writing instructions to his own mind. And this isn't just a Stoic thing. It's a human thing. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world was one bad decision away from disaster. Not a bad press cycle, not a bad poll, a mistake that could destroy everything. And what did Kennedy do in that pressure? He didn't explode on his advisors. He didn't rage at his enemies. He didn't try to dominate the room. He pulled out paper. He wrote. He doodled. He worked it out on the page instead of working it out on people. That's the point. Paper is patient. People aren't. When you journal, you create space between stimulus and response. You stop dumping emotions on others. You stop acting out your stress. You slow down long enough to notice what's really happening in you. And once you can see it clearly, you can control it. That's why journaling protects you. It protects your relationships. It protects your work. It protects your future. And if your kids or your grandkids ever read what you wrote one day, they won't just see your schedule. They'll see your mind. They'll see what you overcame. They'll see what you believed. They'll see the kind of person you were building. So if you pick only one habit this year, pick this one. Take 5 minutes. Morning or night, doesn't matter. One page, one paragraph, even a few messy lines. Get it out of your head. Put it on the page. Because the next habit builds on this, and it changes your entire day before it even starts. Section 2. Wake up early. Most people don't lose their life all at once. They lose it 10 minutes at a time. Snooze button, rushed mornings, starting the day already behind, already reacting, already tired before anything even happens. The Stoics warned against this exact pattern. Marcus Aurelius opens Book 5 of Meditations with a brutal reminder. When you struggle to get out of bed, he says, ask yourself, what was I born for? To stay warm under the covers, or to do the work a human being is meant to do? He wasn't talking about grinding for a job you hate. He was talking about showing up for your own life. Because time doesn't slow down just because you feel comfortable. Your life is happening whether you participate or not. There's something sacred about the morning, before the noise, before the messages, before the news, before the demands. That quiet is power, and when you wake up early, you claim it for yourself. You're not late, you're not rushed, you're not reacting, you're choosing. This habit sends a message one most people never send to yourself. I don't wait until I'm forced. I decide. That alone changes how you carry yourself the rest of the day. Great creators understood this. Toni Morrison woke up in the dark for years to write before the world could pull her attention away. As a single mother, she did her most important work before she ever heard the word mom for the first time that day. Not because it was easy, but because it mattered. And yes, waking up early is hard. That's the point. The Stoics believed we should train the body so it's not disobedient to the mind. Comfort weakens that connection. Discipline strengthens it. You don't need to love waking up early. You just need to love the person it turns you into. Get up. Get a head start on your own life. Journal, walk, think, build, create. Because once you own your mornings, the rest of the day stops owning you. And the next habit takes this discipline even further by teaching you how to do hard things on purpose. Section 3. Do hard things on purpose. The Stoics didn't believe growth happened by accident. They trained for it. They deliberately chose discomfort not because they loved suffering, but because they understood something most people avoid. Comfort makes you fragile. Seneca said it clearly, we treat the body rigorously so that it may not be disobedient to the mind. In simple terms, If you never challenge yourself, your will gets weak. And when life gets hard, as it always does, you break. That's why this habit matters. Not random suffering. Chosen difficulty, cold exposure, long runs, heavy training, early mornings, hard conversations. These are not punishments, they are rehearsals. Each time you do something hard on purpose, you prove to yourself that discomfort doesn't control you. There's a modern version of this idea called the Misogi principle. The idea is simple. Pick one big, hard thing each year. Something that scares you. Something you can't fake. Something that forces you to grow into the person capable of completing it. Run a marathon. Build a business. Learn a brutal skill. Train for something that demands commitment. Because once you've done one truly hard thing, everything else feels manageable. This is why people who do hard physical things often carry quiet confidence. They've already faced the voice that says quit and ignored it. They know they can push through when it matters. The goal isn't to suffer. The goal is to become someone who doesn't collapse under pressure. And once you start doing hard things deliberately, you'll need something just as powerful but calmer to balance it. Something that clears your head instead of pushing your limits. That's where the next habit comes in. Section 4. Walking, the quiet reset. Walking looks too simple to matter. That's why most people dismiss it. But the Stoics didn't. Seneca said the mind must be given over to wandering walks. Not scrolling, not rushing, walking. When you walk, something strange happens. Your nervous system settles, your thoughts slow down. Problems that felt heavy start to loosen their grip. You're not forcing clarity, it arrives on its own. This is why so many great ideas show up on walks. Nietzsche said that only thoughts formed while walking are worth anything. Not because walking is magical, but because it removes the noise. No screens, no pressure, no performance. Walking pulls you out of reaction mode. You stop being trapped inside your head. You reconnect with your body, with your breath, with the world outside your problems. And that creates space. Space to think clearly instead of emotionally. It also trains consistency. Walking isn't dramatic, it's repeatable, daily, sustainable. You don't need motivation, you just step outside and move. Over time, this habit grounds you. It keeps you sane when life gets chaotic. Some people lift to feel strong, some run to feel disciplined. Walking teaches you something different, how to stay steady. And when your mind is steady, you're ready for the next habit, one that compounds quietly but changes everything over time. Section 5. Small steps. Every day. Most people overestimate what they can change in a week and underestimate what they can change in a year. They wait for motivation. They wait for breakthroughs. They wait for the perfect moment. And while they wait, nothing changes. The Stoics didn't think like that. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, said that well-being is achieved by small steps, but it is no small thing. That idea changes everything. It means transformation isn't dramatic. It's cumulative, quiet, relentless. Seneca practiced this daily. In his letters, he says that each day we should gain something that fortifies us against poverty, misfortune, and fear. Not everything, just one thing. One insight. One improvement. One correction. This is how real discipline is built. You show up even when progress feels invisible. You don't chase perfection, you chase consistency. A few minutes of writing, a short walk, a page of reading. A small effort, repeated long enough, becomes identity. Think about it logically. One small improvement per day doesn't feel impressive, but after 365 days, you're not the same person anymore. And because many of these habits compound, the growth accelerates. This mindset removes pressure. You stop asking, "Did I do enough today?" and start asking, "Did I show up?" That shift alone keeps people moving when others quit. And once you understand compounding not just in money, but in behavior, you're ready for the next habit. Because discipline isn't only about improving yourself, it's also about how you show up for others. Section 6. Serve something beyond yourself. Most people think Stoicism is about self-control, emotional distance, and personal toughness. They miss the point. The Stoics never believed the good life was about you alone. They believed a good life was lived in service to something larger than yourself. Marcus Aurelius returns to this idea again and again. A good life, he says, is good character and actions for the common good, not self-obsession, not isolation, contribution. When your goals are only about you, your success, your comfort, your progress, You eventually stall. You overthink. You get discouraged. You lose perspective. But when your actions help someone else, something changes. You get out of your head. Service grounds you. It gives meaning to discipline. It reminds you that your effort matters beyond your mood. This doesn't mean grand gestures. It means daily usefulness. Helping a friend, teaching what you know, showing up when it's inconvenient, making things better instead of louder. The Stoics believed this was our role as human beings, to cooperate, to support, to contribute. And here's the paradox. Serving others doesn't drain you when done correctly. It strengthens you. It gives you a reason to keep going when motivation fades. It pulls you forward on days when self-interest isn't enough. If you want a year that feels meaningful, not just productive, build service into your habits. Because discipline without purpose becomes hollow, but discipline aimed at the common good becomes unshakable. And that brings us to the final habit, the one that sharpens all the others, the one that gives urgency to your time and clarity to your choices. Section 7. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. This habit is uncomfortable. That's why it works. The Stoics practiced memento mori. Remember, you will die not to be morbid, but to stay awake. Because nothing clarifies your priorities faster than remembering that your time is not unlimited. Seneca warned that death isn't something waiting for you in the future. It's happening now. Every day you live, a day is gone forever. The last year of your life is already dead. You will never get it back. Most people waste time as if they own it. They protect their money, their reputation, their comfort, but they give away their hours without thinking. Pointless meetings, endless scrolling, empty conversations. Days disappear quietly. Remembering death cuts through that illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That sentence isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to free you. When you remember how fragile life is, you stop postponing what matters. You say no more easily. You stop tolerating nonsense. You focus on the people and work that deserve your time. You act with urgency but not panic, with clarity, not anxiety. Memento mori makes courage simpler. Why hold back when tomorrow isn't promised? Why stay small when time is already slipping away? Why waste your life on things that don't matter? This habit doesn't make life darker. It makes it sharper, more intentional, more alive. And when you combine this awareness with journaling, early mornings, hard things, walking, compounding habits, and service, you don't just have a good year. You have a meaningful one. Because you stop drifting. You stop waiting. You start living on purpose. If this year is going to be different, it won't be because the calendar changed. It will be because you did. Conclusion. Make this the turning point. A new year doesn't change your life. A decision does. Nothing we talked about today is complicated. None of it is flashy. That's why it works. Journaling, waking up early, doing hard things, walking, improving a little every day, serving others, remembering that your time is limited. These aren't trends, they're training. The Stoics understood something most people never learn. You don't become better by wishing you become better, by practicing, quietly, repeatedly, without waiting to feel ready. You don't need to do everything at once. That's how people fail. Pick one habit, just one. Commit to it. Put it on a schedule. Treat it as non-negotiable. 6 months from now, you won't recognize how clearly you think, how calmly you act, how differently you carry yourself. And when life gets hard, and it will, you won't panic. You'll respond. Because you've trained for it. Remember, time is already passing. Another year will disappear whether you use it or not. The question is simple: will you drift, or will you live deliberately? If this message helped you, subscribe to Stoic Spring, not for motivation, for reminders, for discipline, for clarity when the world gets loud. And before you leave, comment this below: I choose to live deliberately. Because the best year of your life doesn't start on January 1st. It starts the moment you decide to demand the best of yourself.